Catherine Sterling's billion-dollar morning fell apart in seconds. On a lonely stretch of Texas highway, her sleek BMW gave up, brought down not by business rivals, but by a $3 radiator hose. Now, standing in the scorching sun, silk blazer clinging to her skin, she stared at the smoking hood, heart racing, plans collapsing. It was a disaster. And then, through the heat haze, an old red Ford Ranger pulled over. Its door creaked open, and in that moment, Catherine's life was about to change forever. With a surge of impotent fury, Catherine kicked the BMW's front tire. A cloud of fine, pale dust puffed up, coating the toe of her $1,000 shoe in a film of rustic mockery. It looked like powdered sugar on a funeral cake. She pulled out her phone, a sleek slab of glass and metal that was usually her scepter of power. Now, it was a useless brick displaying two mocking words: no service. The company's proprietary tow truck app, designed for exactly this kind of executive emergency, spun its loading icon into an infinite digital purgatory. On the dashboard, every warning light had illuminated at once. A chaotic, silent carnival of failure. She was stranded. Well and truly stranded. Every tick of her watch felt like a hammer blow, chipping away at the keynote, the deal, and the carefully constructed armor of her reputation. That's when she heard it, the gravelly cough and sputter of an engine that had seen better decades. The Ford Ranger, its red paint faded to a dull, sun-bleached rose, coughed to a stop about 20 feet behind her. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, a door creaked open with the sound of protesting metal, and a pair of worn, scuffed work boots hit the gravel. A man unfolded himself from the driver's seat, tall and lean, wearing jeans and a simple mechanic's shirt. He moved with an unhurried ease that grated on Catherine's frayed nerves. "Morning, ma'am," he called out, his voice calm and even, carrying easily in the still air. "Saw the steam from way back on the ridge. That's a whole lot of trouble for a Tuesday. Mind if I take a peek under the hood for you?" Catherine's shoulders tensed. She folded her arms, a defensive posture she usually reserved for hostile boardroom negotiations. "I don't carry cash," she stated flatly, the words clipped and sharp. It was a preemptive strike, a way of establishing the terms of engagement in a world where nothing was free. The man didn't even blink. He just gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod as he approached. "Didn't ask for any," he said, his eyes already on the front of her car. He moved past her, his presence surprisingly non-threatening, and with a practiced motion, he found the latch and popped the hood. A fresh wave of steam and the smell of boiled antifreeze billowed out. Without hesitation, he leaned in, his fingers moving with a deftness and certainty that reminded Catherine of a surgeon she'd once observed. It was like he was tuning a complex, delicate instrument. He prodded a collapsed black tube, then slipped a roll of heavy-duty tape from his back pocket. He began wrapping the split hose, his movements economical and precise. He followed it with a small, sturdy clamp from another pocket, cinching it down with a quick twist of a tool he produced from somewhere. "Will she make it to town?" Catherine asked, her voice betraying a sliver of grudging respect. He stepped back, wiping his hands on a rag. "Should get you 20 miles, easy enough. Just don't try to enter her in the Indy 500 on the way." He looked at her and offered a smile. It was quick, polite, and completely devoid of expectation. And then, just as quickly, it was gone. Catherine's eyes, trained to absorb every detail about a potential asset or threat, scanned his uniform. A neatly stitched patch over his heart read, "Asher Grant." Underneath, in slightly faded embroidery, were the words, "Sunrise Garage, Est. 2003. He was a relic from another time, a man who fixed things with his hands instead of a software update. On his instruction, Catherine slid back into the driver's seat, the leather still warm from the Sunday. She turned the key, her breath held tight in her chest. The engine sputtered, caught, and then settled into a steady, miraculously stable hum. The cacophony of warning lights on the dash vanished. Relief flooded her system so intensely that her knees felt weak. She had her keynote back. She had her $43 million back. She got out of the car again, her entire demeanor shifted. The imperious CEO had been replaced by someone who had just been pulled back from the brink. "Seriously," she said, reaching for her purse, What do I owe you? Name a price. I'll double it. He was wiping his hands on a rag that might have been white a decade ago, his attention focused on cleaning the grease from his knuckles. No, ma'am, no price. He finally looked up, his gaze direct and unwavering. Just do me a favor, pay it forward. The next time you see someone stuck on the shoulder, help them out, that's all. Before she could process the statement, before she could insist or argue or fall back on the transactional logic that governed her entire universe, he was already walking away. He climbed back into the old Ranger, the door squealing shut behind him. The engine turned over with a familiar rumbling cough, and with a final puff of rusty-colored exhaust, he was gone, swallowed back into the shimmering heat from which he came. Catherine was left standing in the silence, the quiet thrum of her rescued engine sounding like a miracle. Asher glanced down at a beat-up plastic digital watch on his wrist, the kind you buy at a drugstore. The screen was scratched, but the numbers were clear. 7:45 a.m. He had about 30 minutes before his daughter Mia's school would start calling the garage, wondering why she wasn't in her usual spot in the morning drop-off line. He had learned to measure his life in these tight, unforgiving increments. Time for one more roadside rescue, time to get a parts order in, time to make sure Mia had her lunch money. As he was giving the clamp a final tightening, Catherine's voice, now noticeably softer and laced with genuine curiosity, cut through the air. She'd noticed the watch, and a small, laminated drawing of a smiling sun taped to his dashboard. "Are you a single dad?" she asked. Asher paused his work for a fraction of a second, the question landing with an unexpected weight. He straightened up, a faint, sad smile touching his lips. "Yes, ma'am. Since my wife, Sarah, passed away last year. It's just me and Mia now. She's 7. Got her mom's artistic talent and my stubborn streak." He gestured with his head toward the drawing on the dash. "She's the official mascot of the garage." He gave the temporary hose a final confident pat, then met Catherine's gaze. "All right, you're good to go." With a final thumbs up, he watched as the sleek, silver BMW pulled carefully back onto the blacktop and accelerated away, leaving him alone on the roadside with his thoughts and his daughter's drawing. Sunrise Garage looked like it was held together by a combination of stubborn optimism and industrial-grade duct tape. The paint on the sign was peeling, and the hand-lettered promise of honest work, fair prices was faded by years of relentless Texas Sunday. One of the fluorescent bulbs in the sign flickered intermittently, a slow, tired wink. The place had a soul, but it was a weary one. Inside, the air smelled of grease, hot coffee, and worn-out tires. Mia was sitting at the front counter, her small legs dangling from a tall stool, her tongue poking out from the corner of her mouth in concentration as she colored in a picture of a winged horse. She looked up as Asher walked in, her face breaking into a wide grin. "Did you rescue another dragon, Dad?" she asked, her name for any fancy car that needed his help. "A silver one this time," he confirmed, ruffling her hair. "How's school?" "Good. Mrs. Davison gave me a gold star in spelling. Can we get pizza for dinner tonight? The one with the cheese inside the bread?" "Only if you agree to extra pineapple on my half," he bargained, leaning against the counter. She giggled, a bright, happy sound that seemed to push back against the garage's shadows. "Deal," he laughed with her, a genuine, unburdened sound. But then his eyes fell on the stack of envelopes, held together by a thick rubber band next to the old-fashioned cash register. First National Bank, County Tax Assessor, Apex Auto Parts. The laughter died in his throat. The weight of it all landed squarely on his shoulders, heavy and suffocating, like a transmission dropped from a 6-foot lift. That night, long after Mia was asleep, her breathing soft and steady in the next room, Asher sat at their small kitchen table, the envelopes spread out before him like a losing hand of cards. The numbers swam before his tired eyes. He put his head in his hands, the rough calluses of his palms pressing into his forehead. What was he going to do? Sell the old tow truck? It felt like selling a piece of his father, who had left him the shop. Take a second job? A night shift? At the refinery? The money would be good, but it would mean missing bedtime stories, missing piano practice, missing Mia. The third option, the one that made his stomach clench, was to close the shop entirely. Admit defeat. Miles away, in a suite at the top of a luxury hotel, Catherine Sterling stood on a private balcony, the city lights of Austin winking below like a carpet of fallen stars. She'd nailed the keynote. The deal was as good as done. She should have been celebrating, but her mind wasn't on the $43 million victory. She couldn't shake the image of the quiet man on the side of the road, the man who refused money, whose hands were stained with grease but moved with absolute integrity, the man who had a little girl waiting for him. A man who seemed to possess a form of wealth she couldn't begin to quantify. On Wednesday at noon, the little bell over the door of Sunrise Garage gave a sharp, clear jingle. Asher looked up from the intricate brake assembly of a decade-old pickup, his hands covered in dark gray dust. A woman was standing there, silhouetted against the bright sunlight. As his eyes adjusted, he realized it was the woman from the side of the road. She'd traded the dust-covered blazer for another one. This one, a sharp, charcoal gray that looked like it had been tailored by an architect. She had stepped out of an equally sharp charcoal SUV that was now parked silently where rusted pickups usually Saturday. Asher wiped his hands on his rag, a flicker of concern on his face. Car acting up again? That patch was only meant to be temporary. The car is fine, Catherine said, her voice smooth and confident. But the breakdown? It fixed something else. In a way, her sharp eyes swept across the garage, taking in the tidy rows of well-used tools on the pegboard, the worn but clean concrete floor, and the small, sun-faded birthday photograph of Mia taped next to the register. You fixed my entire day, possibly my entire quarter, with a roll of tape and a hose clamp. I've spent the past week turning that single act over and over in my mind. You handed me something for free that my company spends millions trying to fabricate, a culture of genuine, unconditional service. It turns out the most valuable asset I have isn't on any of my balance sheets. She stepped forward and placed a folded piece of paper on the grease-stained counter. She unfolded it. It was a check. The payee line was blank. The amount, written in neat, precise blue ink, was $5 million. Asher stared at it. The number seemed to vibrate on the paper. It didn't look real. Partnership, Catherine said, her voice cutting through his shock. This is not charity. My company develops and tests high-stakes prototypes all over the world. When they fail in the field, we lose millions. I need a rapid response team, a global Sunrise Garage that can get them running again. A team built on your philosophy. I want you to build it, run it. You'll own a significant piece of it, and Mia gets to keep her zip code. Asher's mouth had gone completely dry. He tried to speak, but the only word that came out was a dry croak. 5 million? Catherine nodded, a small, knowing smile on her face. It has more zeros than you're used to, Asher, but it's built on the exact same heart that's already in this garage. She set the check down on the counter with the same casual air someone might use to leave a library card. The crisp, pale blue paper was a stark, almost comical contrast against the dark, oil-stained wood. I need an answer in 48 hours, she said, her tone shifting back to the decisive CEO. In my world, hesitation is a liability. Talk to your daughter, talk to your banker, talk to your priest, whoever you need to. But at the end of 2 days, I need to know if we are going to put Sunrise Garage on the map, literally. She didn't wait for a reply. She simply turned, her heels clicking with sharp authority on the concrete floor, a sound utterly alien in that space. She walked out of the garage and back into the world of glass towers and billion-dollar deals. The bell over the door gave another soft, delicate chime, like the sound of a page turning in a very large book. Asher was left alone in the sudden silence. The only sounds the familiar hum of the air compressor and the frantic pounding of his own heart. He stared at the check, at the impossible string of zeros. He slowly reached out and touched the corner of it with a greasy fingertip, as if to confirm it was real. It was. That night, the familiar bedtime ritual felt different, charged with a strange and terrifying new energy. Asher sat on the edge of Mia's bed, the worn quilt tucked neatly under her chin. Her room was her sanctuary, the walls covered in her colorful drawings of magical creatures and faraway castles. "Hey, sweet pea," he began, his voice quieter than usual. "Remember the fancy car lady? The one with the silver dragon I fixed on the highway for free?" Mia nodded, her eyes bright in the soft glow of her nightlight. "The one you helped for free?" She was nice. She looked sad. "Well," Asher took a deep breath. "She came back to the garage today, and she wants to give Daddy a really big, really important job. It would mean we could get a new sign for the garage. We wouldn't have to worry about the bills anymore. But it might also mean I have to go on airplanes sometimes, to fix other dragons in faraway places." Mia's brow furrowed in serious thought. She was quiet for a long moment, processing the information. Then, she looked him right in the eye, her expression deadly serious. "Will you still be here for my piano recital next month?" The question hit him with the force of a physical blow. It was the only question that mattered. "Front row," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I will be in the front row, cheering the loudest. Pinky promise." He held out his little finger. She locked her own tiny finger around his. A deal had been struck. She nodded, her decision made. "Then I vote yes," she declared with all the gravity of a seasoned diplomat. "But, Dad, we need a brand new neon sign for the garage, a big one, and it has to have my name on it too, in bright pink lights." Asher felt a laugh bubble up from his chest, a release of all the tension and fear. The deal was sealed, not with a handshake, but with a high five that echoed in the quiet room. 6 weeks later, Sunrise Garage was almost unrecognizable, yet fundamentally the same. It gleamed under the Texas sun, a fresh coat of deep blue paint on its walls. Where an empty, weed-choked lot once sat, a second, state-of-the-art bay was now framed in steel and glass. Inside, brand-new tool chests stood at attention, their drawers filled with precision instruments aligned like toy soldiers. The flickering sign was gone, replaced by a beautiful retro-style neon sign that glowed brightly. Sunrise and Mia's Garage. In the corner, Mia's name shone in brilliant, perfect pink. Asher stood in the center of the new bay, patiently teaching 3 new hires, a young woman fresh out of trade school, and 2 Army veterans, how to splice a delicate CAN bus wiring harness without waking up the car's notoriously sensitive main computer. He was a natural teacher, translating complex engineering into stories about fishing line and garden hoses. Just then, Catherine's charcoal SUV pulled up, unannounced. She got out and surveyed the scene, a genuine smile spreading across her face. "Looks different," she said, walking toward him. "Still smells like brake cleaner and coffee," he grinned back. "Some things are sacred." He showed her the new office. On the freshly painted wall, framed in a simple, elegant frame, was the very first dollar he had ever earned in the old garage. Right next to it, in a matching frame, was Mia's finger painting of a bright, colorful rainbow arcing over the original shop. "You kept the name," Catherine noted, looking at the 2 framed pieces. "Mostly." Asher's gaze softened. "Sunrise is where my dad taught me that no matter how dark the night gets, the daylight always shows up eventually. I can't let that go. And Mia, well, she's my daylight." In a glass-walled conference room, 40 stories above the city, a slide clicked onto the main screen. The heading read, "Project Chimera, Fleet Performance Metrics." The investors, a notoriously tough crowd who had been calling for Catherine's head just a few months prior, leaned forward. The key metric appeared in bold. Prototype fleet downtime, reduced by 40.1%. A murmur went through the room. Operational costs were down. Turnaround times were slashed. The Sunrise division was a runaway success. The investors who had once wanted Catherine's head now wanted her autograph. The story caught fire. A reporter from a major business journal ran a feature with the headline, "The Mechanic Who Took Silicon Valley to Church." Invitations for Catherine and Asher to appear on talk shows began to stack up. A children's book author even emailed, asking Mia for her official permission to create a character based on her dad, a superhero who wore coveralls and fixed the world with kindness and a wrench. Through it all, Asher remained resolutely himself. His calendar had meetings with engineers from Munich and Tokyo, but every Friday afternoon from 3 o'clock to 5 p.m. was permanently blocked out in red ink. Milkshakes with Mia. He was learning that there were some currencies, the truly valuable ones, that you could never, ever wire transfer. One rainy Thursday afternoon, the original silver BMW, now fully repaired and long since retired from service, sat polished to a mere shine in the grand, marble-floored lobby of the Sterling Corporation's global headquarters. It was an art installation, a piece of company history. A small, elegant brass plaque on a stand next to it read, "Our most important asset," fixed with duct tape, fueled by kindness. Catherine and Asher stood together before it, two people from different worlds who had somehow found common ground. "You know," Catherine said softly, her eyes on the car, "for weeks, I thought I was saving my company that day on the highway. I was so focused on the $43 million. She turned to him. "It turns out I needed you to remind me what business is even for." Asher reached out and gently tapped the hood of the car, his calloused fingers making a soft thudding sound. "We're all just trying to get home safe, right, Catherine? That's all it ever is." A small hand tugged on his sleeve. Mia looked up at them, her expression expectant. "Can we get tacos after this?" she whispered loudly. Asher's smile was immediate and warm. "Tacos, always, sweet pea." They turned and walked toward the massive glass doors of the tower, three silhouettes against the neon glow of the sprawling city. They were living proof that sometimes the right, patient twist of a simple wrench doesn't just tighten a loose piece of metal, it straightens out the whole world, just a little.